Hello and welcome to ETBFSI.com by the Economic Times. My name is Amol Dete, and I'm delighted to have Shri Atanu Chakraborty, a veteran in the world of finance, economy, and policy making, the former Secretary of Department of Economic Affairs, Minister of Finance, and he's also the chairperson of board of HDFC Bank and also other financial institutions. Shri Chakraborty, glad to have you.
Pleasure. It's very nice to see you as well as talk to those who, to the viewers and readers through you. It's a pleasure indeed.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. And your perspective matters the most specifically on union budget because you have been there earlier. You have been part of the whole, the crafting process of the budget. And that's why, your perspective is really important for us to understand, where is the budget taking us. So broadly, I would like you to tell us, given India is a bright spot, is the budget giving justice to the growth and sustainability of India? Is the budget really taking India forward?
What happens is that many times growth and sustainability, fiscal sustainability that is, are seen as a binary. And I guess that's where mistakes are made. That is because of the quantitative easing post 2008, whose results we are seeing. So, therefore, I guess many times growth necessarily doesn't come from excessive easing of interest rates. Neither it comes necessarily from excessive government spending. Therefore, there is complex metrics of need for government spending, especially on capex wherever is required. Now, one of the sorts that is the government capex is there in large measure. So one feels that beyond that is also perhaps beyond the system capability. So one is quite satisfied with the direction of government capex. On the policy front, one didn't sort of expect either this year being the penultimate year before the election, and it's a fair amount of balance. And I feel that growth impetus being already there in the economy, we did very well last year. I feel it's a pretty, I won't use a word balanced in the fashion in which it's being used. I would say that it's pretty well crafted budget.
Okay, sure. Noted your points. Since you partly mentioned about fiscal, that was my obvious and an important question. So the projection of 5.9%, economists are kind of very happy with this projection because the government has been thinking about it very aggressively in reducing that exposure to fiscal. But is it achievable? What kinds of strategy do you think government may adopt for its expenditure to achieve this target?
If you look at completely on a standalone basis, 5.9 even is a very, very high number. Finance Minister in his speech mentioned it as much. However, post pandemic, when all governments all over the world had to provide fiscal stimulus over a period of time to sustain the economies, perhaps it was needed. Government spending had to expand to fill the space to keep the economy going and also provide for the poor. India very substantially provided for it, very successfully too. Now, whether doability of the reduction of 0.5, well, it's a tall order. It's not very easy to start cutting down. You can't cut expenditure too much, especially on the capex side. Subsidies more or less have a reasonably fixed space. Interest costs, account of previous borrowings are also high. Therefore, one would be looking at a lot of tax collection efficiencies to kick in this year and follow the trajectory on GST as we had been witnessing over the last 1.5 years or so, to see that this gets achieved. And there are, of course, pressures of populism on account of elections. You can't deny. Budget is a political statement. So we'll have to watch
Sure.
as we go along.
Hmm.
But the statement of intent,
Right.
I see that as a very important element to start with, and that's in place.
Well, sure, I think you gave that between the lines intent part, which most of the policymakers and the economists actually look at, not more than the announcement, but the intent of the government. So thanks for highlighting that. Now comes a very important question, sir, which I'm trying to learn from a lot of my contacts and also industry wants to know is FM has specified that in the budget that financial regulators should carry out a comprehensive review of existing regulators. It could be SEBI, it could be RBI. But the what we would like to learn is what kinds of reviews or revisions or simplifications that the government is suggesting. I mean, if you could share your guess, because the government really wants regulators to simplify the process. So could you, I mean, demystify it for us?
Like you, I can also make that guess. I'm sure you would have asked those questions to the secretaries who came for interviews immediately post budget, and would also be meeting press when they travel all over the country to explain the budget. However, reducing regulatory overburden wherever possible has been a government right from the start, from 2014 or itself, various regulatory fields as a part of ease of doing business. However, that should not be confused or conflated with that there be less of oversight by regulator, uh, especially in the financial sector, to ensure uh, the interests of depositors or small shareholders. I guess that part, needs to be understood well, as my experience in the government tells me that that always remains paramount. Regulators always have been, and especially if you see RBI, they come out periodically with master directions. They compile a lot of directions which have been there together so that they are easily readable, easily, and the interpretations also become easy. I somewhere read Governor RBI saying that he would also set timelines to various requests coming from the regulated entities. I guess it's a bit of an ongoing exercise, if you ask me, where regulation, sort of streamlining the regulation at the same time protecting the interests of the regulated entity, and in turn ensure there's fiscal stability. That's very critical. The very objective of regulation is also to provide for fiscal stability. So those are multiple objectives which regulators always have to meet. So that's a very tough job. They always have at hand, and there is also public perceptions on various entities which always comes up, which
Hmm.
also ties down regulators' hand many a times. Uh, I'm saying. So that in itself provides for some amount of fuzziness in the entire regulated space. But I guess our regulators are very, very sophisticated. They follow the internationally laid out norms and have manned by very competent set of people. So we do see, possibly a route that would be of simplifying things a little bit more, removing additional requirement of information, which is where it's not needed, and using a lot of IT for information exchange. I guess those would be the directions, is I can surmise would be there.
Absolutely, sir. So let me move ahead, and I have a couple of more questions. So another part is specifically on the tone that you sometime back said. So the tone of it is also specifically focused somewhere on the Atmanirbhar Bharat. And so my question on this background is, whether angel tax or the expensive import for luxury goods, the tone of the budget is specifically on focusing on India and making foreign policies or foreign slightly uncomfortable foreign goods with the taxation or other parts. So how do you see it translating into economy? What kind of benefits do you see India is getting as a whole as an economy? And on the other side, do you see the foreign investors may get unhappy with it?
Size of the economy that we are targeting calls for investment. Entire investment cannot be met by domestic savings alone. Therefore, external investment is needed both in debt and equity space. Therefore, I guess we have to understand that government would ever do anything which hurt. So to that extent, duties are used sometimes, and I didn't see too many pages on that. So frankly, it's relatively limited. And so it's and protection for certain sort, because some amount of fragment around bonds, but that always had there the taxation clause which being discussed had a sunset clause in any case. But then these are iterative processes. Especially the duty and the taxation structure which relates to bonds and equity, both are iterative processes where changes get made over a period of time to achieve the best set. That is, people are equity taxed, nobody is taxed more, there is a level playing field for everybody. So it's not very easy always to achieve that kind of a ground. So some amount of chopping and changes happens every year. I don't see, world over, the press has not talked about anything negative per se, flow of investment in India. In fact, I was reading in New York Times, it talked actually very highly of the manner of about Indian economy post certain shocks which came on account of a particular entity. So that reflects that there were no policy shocks around. That's critical. There is no policy shock which an investor would read. Individually, for one entity or the other, there could be some impacts. That's those are at macro level.
Sure. Noted your points. That helps to understand the perspective in detail. The other thing I would like you to tell us is specifically on the disinvestments parts. There is nothing specifically about the disinvestments, divestments specifically in the budget. Is it because of the previous ambitious, because the previous projects or previous plans were really ambitious and government wants to achieve that rather than announcing new plans? What is your guess or learning here?
See, the provision is roughly about 60,000 crores. IDBI, I understand, is in very advanced stage, so should achieve part of that target. And balance possibly would come from sale of minority shares, or maybe one or another company, which may be a small one, which may be in very advanced stage. Starting this year, any new company and achieving its closure during the year, it takes time and may be difficult. But the instrumentality of selling minority stakes, I guess, can be used very effectively to achieve not only the target but also get some additional resources, and that is certainly in line with the objectives of this investment. Because that spreads the shares very equitably among small shareholders or institutions, other than government, and government gets is able to monetize its investment.
Sure. So another part is specifically on the IFSCA, which is there in the gift city, that is there on the radar of the government since really long time. Certain incentives have been given to the financial institutions who wants to operate there. Also, there are some green shoots there. Budget has also given a support to strengthen the IFSCA. In your view, how do you want IFSCA to shape up? Because the challenge is also this, that not majority of the foreign institutions, has entered into IFSCA since its inception, actually. And now the inception and now the incentives which is given by the government, how do you see it shaping up? Now, do you see that there are more benefits for the foreign companies or even the other companies to set up their shops there in IFSCA?
I had opportunity of seeing IFSCA from the day it started taking root. Uh, I would say it has come a long way.
Okay.
A lot of business is getting done there.
Hmm.
We call it whether it has reached a critical mass. I would feel it is close to getting a stage where it is getting into critical mass.
Hmm.
Whether now that achieves the critical mass in this year or next year, it's difficult to say because these are international flows. So
Hmm.
it's that extent predictability is less. The policy framework on this has consistently improved. And I guess that is the way to go, that every year you find where the gaps are and you fill them in. So I guess this budget will not be the last which provides for certain ways of doing things in IFSCA. I'm sure next budget and even the budget next would again have to provide. Authority has been further, IFSC authority has been further empowered, and there is much better coordination of the authority with other regulators. And people are also getting to understand. Please understand, it's a different jurisdiction. It's a dollar jurisdiction within the country.
Yes.
Once that jurisdiction is built up, the kind of things that can be done there are not very, it takes time for entities to understand, set up entities there because, say, a broking house in India, if it has to set up, start working there, it has to set up a step down entity in IFSCA, get manpower to work there, train them in that kind of a work, and then start going. Now, there is a learning curve, not only at the regulatory and governance level, but there is also a learning curve for the individual entities and they're being able to develop that market. So, that makes the metrics a little bit more complex. But the overall transactions which are growing every year at a very good pace. I do not have the latest number now with me, but whatever I see, I find that it's doing rather well. So I'm very. This is one area I'm very bullish. I feel we need that for so many things, and it's just moving in the right direction. It's a matter of time.
Sure. Noted your point. So now one important question, not just about budget, but the economy as a whole. Though all the leading rating agencies or the global financial institutions like World Bank and even IMF are betting really high on India. But there are certain challenges, right? Inflation is still very high. It's a big challenge. Geopolitical tensions are also not under control, and the policy rates are, moving upwards. So amidst this, how do you see India, during the global volatility, and what kind of impact do you see on India going ahead?
First, the negatives. You have listed them. Fuel prices would keep hanging like a Damocles sword. The slowdown in Western economies would also lower the demand to that extent and bring a certain amount of slowdown. Also, it would introduce a little bit of caution in the global investors for moving their money out into emerging market. To that extent, even the investments to some extent would slow down. But that is one can expect this year to happen. However, India is the fastest growing emerging market today, which is stable. And we know that 6% rate would be achievable. Only its high debt to GDP ratio is something which people worry about. But the good part is that it has no external debt, and especially government has no external debt, very small. So the debt is not subject to currency risk, and internal debts are generally manageable. So therefore, it poses much smaller risk for the international investor. Therefore, I do expect a larger investment flow amongst whatever kitty is being allocated within the emerging market allocated kitty. Uh, so while we do have these gathering clouds on the international horizon, as you have very nicely put it, uh, I do see that on account of fair amount of stability that Indian economy provides on account of its management over a period of time, especially the manner in which India's general government debt is managed, the manner in which its institutions, entities are regulated, the fiscal stability itself, as well as the large middle class, which offers fair amount of demand. That is, the bedrock of how the economy is pushed. I guess should keep the economy growing at a fair clip. I guess only exports, that's an area where we'll have to continuously watch.
Thanks so much for all the meaningful answers here. I am absolutely done with my budget questions, but just allow me to shoot one more question, which is a burning story today, which we partly touched some time back, and that is about the Adani. I know it's not going to be very, very specific, but still I would like you to have your perspective. I do understand that the financial regulators, whether SEBI or RBI, even the finance minister and majority of the banks like SBI, BOB has already clarified their stand on this particular company. But given the situation where everybody is thinking that some negative repercussions may happen in the near future because the exposure of this particular stock into the financial institutions is really high, how do you see this particular situation, which has become a negative syndrome specifically, or a negative drop in the ocean of the financial market now?
Well, if you leave, the entity's name, I'll keep it apart because it had been, it will not be fair to comment on the entity's performance per se. I'm looking at a problem which is very large and can have a systemic impact. If we see a problem of that nature, you see there go to the banks, banking and sector around the debt is the international borrowing and so on and so forth. Therefore, even in case of a crisis, let's put it this way, because if you are, I do not see a huge impact on Indian banking sector, which has normally led to a big impact in the economy. See, Indian economy has got impacted whenever there has been a banking crisis. And there too, I guess the larger exposures are limited to institutions which are otherwise financially strong. They may get hit a little bit in the worst case scenario, but they are capable of weathering the storm.
Right.
Therefore, individual entities, their market impact, yes, some people may lose their wealth for a while, but as a systemic impact, frankly, my own feeling is that it would be very limited.
Sure, I think that helps our readers and viewers understanding your view, not only on this particular company, but also as a budget and economy as a whole. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time and sharing your perspective here for specifically our readers and the viewers. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for watching.